Most people don't realize this, but the moment an emotion appears, the mind treats it as evidence. If it feels heavy, it must be important. If it feels urgent, it must be real. If it hurts, it must mean something about you. This is the first misunderstanding. Emotions are not conclusions. They are outputs. They are the result of systems running in the background, systems that were designed to act fast, not to think clearly. An emotion does not arrive to tell the truth. It arrives to prepare the body. Fear prepares you to escape. Anger prepares you to confront. Shame prepares you to withdraw. Attachment prepares you to hold on. Preparation is not accuracy. These systems evolved in environments where hesitation meant death, and overreaction was safer than underreaction. So the emotional brain learned a rule: assume danger first, verify later. But the modern world rarely threatens survival. Yet the system still reacts as if it does. A delayed text feels like rejection. A neutral comment feels like criticism. A moment of uncertainty feels like failure. Not because those things are threats, but because they resemble old ones. The nervous system works on pattern recognition. It scans the present moment and asks a single question: have I felt something like this before? If the answer is even slightly yes, the response is triggered. This happens before logic, before context, before conscious thought. By the time you notice the emotion, your body has already decided what this moment means. And then the mind does something dangerous. It builds a story that explains the feeling, a story that justifies the reaction, a story that makes the emotion feel correct. I feel anxious, so something must be wrong. I feel offended, so they must be disrespecting me. I feel insecure, so I must be inadequate. The story doesn't need to be true. It only needs to match the feeling. This is how emotions gain authority, not because they're accurate, but because they arrive first. The mind mistakes speed for truth. The faster a reaction appears, the more convincing it feels. But automatic does not mean correct. Reflex does not mean reality. An emotion is simply the nervous system predicting what might happen next based on what has happened before. It is a forecast, not a fact. And like all forecasts, it can be wrong. The problem is not that emotions exist. The problem is that most people never learn to question them. They treat every internal reaction as a message about who they are, what the world is, and what must be done. That's where control is lost. Because the moment an emotion becomes truth, choice disappears. And the system, the automatic one, takes over. This is not awareness. This is obedience. If this made you pause, like the video. Subscribe if you want to keep observing. Here's where the problem deepens. An emotion appears once, then twice, then enough times that the mind stops seeing it as a reaction and starts seeing it as who you are. The nervous system learns through repetition, not through truth, not through insight, through frequency. Whatever fires often becomes familiar. Whatever becomes familiar feels reliable. And whatever feels reliable is trusted, even when it's wrong. This is how emotional patterns harden. Fear stops being a moment and becomes a lens. Anger stops being a signal and becomes a stance. Shame stops being a response and becomes a self-image. I'm just an anxious person. I'm bad at relationships. I'm not confident. These statements don't describe reality, they describe repetition. An emotional response that is never questioned eventually becomes unquestionable. And once that happens, the system protects itself. Fear encourages avoidance. Avoidance prevents contradiction, and the absence of contradiction keeps fear alive. This is the loop. Emotion to behavior to reinforcement. Not because the emotion was accurate, but because it was never challenged. The system never learns that it overreacted. Take anxiety as an example. An anxious response predicts danger, so the body tightens, the breath shortens, attention narrows. The mind scans for confirmation, and if you withdraw, cancel, delay, or avoid, the danger never arrives. But notice what the system learns: not that there was no danger, but that avoidance worked. Anxiety is reinforced by relief. This is why emotions feel so convincing. They are rewarded, not corrected. The nervous system is not asking, "Was this true?" It's asking, "Did this keep me safe?" Safety, not accuracy, is the priority. Over time, the emotion becomes predictive. You feel anxious before acting. You feel ashamed before speaking. You feel defensive before listening. The reaction now runs ahead of reality, and because it arrives early, it feels wise. This is how emotions start to feel like intuition. But intuition is quiet, refined, context-aware. Emotional reflex is loud, urgent, absolute. Confusing the two costs people years. They don't choose based on evidence, they choose based on internal weather. And the weather is shaped by the past. What hurt you once begins to rule you repeatedly, not because it's happening again, but because the system is afraid it might. So it tightens control, it limits risk, narrows possibility, shrinks movement. This is how a protective system turns into a prison, and the most dangerous part is that it feels reasonable. Because when an emotion has been obeyed long enough, disobeying it feels irresponsible, unsafe, almost wrong. But an emotion that cannot be questioned cannot be trusted. And a system that is never challenged never updates. That's where awareness must enter. Not to fight the emotion, but to interrupt its authority. If this made you pause, like the video. Subscribe if you want to keep observing. The shift does not begin by controlling emotion. It begins by reframing it. Not as an instruction, but as an activation. An emotion is the nervous system entering a prepared state. Fear is readiness. Anger is mobilization. Shame is concealment. None of these require belief. They require awareness. The moment you stop asking, "Why do I feel this?" and start asking, "What just turned on?" you step out of the loop. Because systems don't argue. They either run or they're observed. Observation changes behavior. When an emotion is noticed without being obeyed, the nervous system receives new data. It predicted danger, but danger didn't arrive. It prepared for loss, but nothing was lost. This is how recalibration happens, not through force, not through positive thinking, through contradiction. Repeated, calm contradiction. You feel anxiety, and you stay present. You feel shame, and you remain visible. You feel anger, and you delay reaction. Each time this happens, the system updates its expectations. Not immediately, but inevitably. At first, the space is small. A breath, a pause, a moment of restraint. But inside that space, choice returns. And choice weakens compulsion. This is the difference between feeling something and being ruled by it. The emotion still exists, But it no longer decides. Authority shifts. Over time, the nervous system learns that not every activation requires action, that intensity is not instruction, that urgency is not truth, and that presence is safer than avoidance. This is how emotional honesty is built, not by denying what you feel, but by refusing to confuse it with reality. You stop asking, "What does this mean about me?" and start asking, "What is this system trying to do?" The answer is always the same: protection. Not wisdom, not prophecy. Protection. Once you see that, compassion replaces obedience. You don't shame the reaction. You don't fight it. You let it pass without building a story around it. And in that silence, clarity emerges. Not loud, not dramatic, steady. You are not your emotions. You are the awareness they move through. And awareness does not need to rush. It waits.